All right, welcome back. Today, we are diving headfirst into some seriously dense and fascinating lore from the architecture of sovereign entropy. We're going to break down this incredible concept, why the ultimate pursuit of power is actually a trap, a perfectly designed grave. Let's get into it.
So let me just start by asking you this. Imagine you could build your perfect reality, right? A flawless, stable paradise exactly how you want it. But what if the very act of creating that perfection automatically unleashed an equal and opposite force of total destruction? That's the devastating question at the very heart of what we're talking about today. So here's our roadmap. We're going to walk through this cosmic tragedy in 5 acts. We'll start with how a god made himself. Then we'll see the birth of his own personal shadow, watch as his perfect world begins to decay, and then face the final unbreakable law of the grave. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together in the ultimate trap of absolute power.
Okay, first up, a self-made god. See, to really get why the trap works, we first have to understand the blueprints of this reality. How is it built? What are the fundamental rules of the game?
Well, the core idea, the operating system for this whole universe, is something called the abyssal dialectic. And here's what that means. Reality isn't some stable, solid thing. Nope. It's a high-tension wire, a constant battle between a sovereign yes, the will to exist, to create, to impose order, and an absolute no, the crushing pull back into nothing.
And this is the perfect way to think about it. I mean, how do you really know you exist? According to this philosophy, you need something to push against. Our absolute I, the sovereign, needs the resistance of a non-I, a shadow, just to even be aware of himself. Without that friction, you can't have a self. It's as simple as that.
So, it all boils down to these two opposing forces. On one side, you've got the king, Glaucus. He's the force of assertion. His philosophy is master morality, this hyper-intelligent belief that the entire universe is just a laboratory for his will. His goal is to create a crystalline stasis, a perfect, rigid, unchanging reality. He is the fundamental yes. But in saying yes, he automatically creates the other side, the shadow, the force of denial. This is necrotic flux. Think of it like a dark, chaotic plasma designed to dissolve structure. Its only purpose is to be that essential friction, that absolute no.
So let's move on to Act 2, because this is where things get really interesting. This philosophical need for an opposite, well, it stops being just a concept and becomes a physical law with some truly terrifying consequences. This is the law of reciprocal assertion.
And the law itself is brutally, elegantly simple. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Every single ounce of sovereign light the king puts out to say yes and build his world automatically, instantly, generates a no of the exact same power, dedicated to tearing it all down. It's a perfectly balanced and totally inescapable equation of doom.
So how did this all kick off? It happened during the Komoda event. Glaucus used this incredible body of knowledge to literally rewrite his own atoms. He turned his body into a crystalline cellular lattice, basically a god-tier, planet-sized biological computer. But to achieve that state of perfection, he had to get rid of all the messy, mortal parts of himself. And those discarded pieces, they didn't just vanish, they clumped together, gained sentience, and became the shadow. He literally created his own destroyer from the parts of himself he threw away.
And this right here is the trap of self-actualization. It's just devastating, because the shadow is a perfect mirror. Its power is always exactly proportional to the king's ambition. The more the king refines his perfect, crystalline world, the stronger and smarter the shadow's chaos becomes to counter it. He's stuck in a recursive nightmare loop. The stronger he gets, the stronger his destroyer gets. There's no way out.
Which brings us right to our third section. The shadow is no longer just some philosophical consequence. It's now an active agent in the world. And this is where the king's creation really, truly begins to rot from the inside out, all governed by the law of elemental transmutation. And listen, we are not talking about simple rust or decay. This is described as an ontological swallow of darkness. The very idea of reality is being consumed, erased. And we get a new player on the board, the captain from the abyss. You can think of him as a water vampire, a parasite born from the king's own magical arrogance, and his whole job is to harvest the toxic byproducts of that pride. So here's the 4-step playbook for dissolution. First, the king builds his perfect, rigid world.
Second, the shadow intervenes, introducing a substance called burning water, which is basically a super solvent that just erases structure. Third, the captain's poison, his saline ichor, starts a chain reaction that rots everything: souls, digital networks, you name it. And here's the final, brutal irony. The king's own electrical power, the very thing he uses to maintain control, is what fuels this whole process, speeding up his own world's collapse. You'd think it couldn't get any worse, right? Well, there's a final boss in this cosmic system, an ultimate unbreakable limit. This is the law of the grave, also known as the law of final entropy.
And the enforcer of this law is an entity called the Sea Stormer. Now, this thing isn't on the king's side or the shadow's side. It is the result of their conflict. It's the synthesis. Imagine the collective weight of every soul that has ever expired, the entire underworld suddenly gaining consciousness. Its only job is to ensure that no structure, no matter how perfect, can last forever.
And its message to the sovereign is just bone-chilling. Your covenant of thunder and crystalline lattices are but vanity before the laws of the dead. All structure is a lie. That's it. Final word. Game over. Everything the king built, everything he is declared a lie. Vanity. Utterly meaningless.
And now for our grand finale. Let's tie all of these laws and principles together to see the complete, horrifying, and, you have to admit, kind of beautiful architecture of this trap. This is the synthesis of the dialectic. This table just lays the whole paradox bare. It's the aha moment. Look at it. Every single thing the sovereign tries to achieve directly creates its own specific undoing. He wants permanent stasis. He generates the flux to dissolve it. He wants to master time. He awakens a thing that eats time. He wants to be the absolute I. He creates an equal spirit who denies. It is a perfect, hermetically sealed prison of his own design. So, in the end, nobody wins. There is no victory. There is no defeat. There is only what the Source calls a frozen nothingness. The king achieves his goal of a perfect, unchanging world, but that world is now just his own tomb. A static, silent, perfect grave.
And that leaves us with this one final haunting thought. For a being like the sovereign, stuck in this cosmic trap, the challenge is no longer about winning or conquering. The only challenge left is to learn how to breathe in the very void that you yourself created. A perfect and perfectly tragic end.